With Luka Doncic tearing it up for the Dallas Mavericks in the NBA, you can't help but wonder where he makes it on the list of the all-time best players in Mavs history. Because I have to start with Brad Davis, one of the original Mavericks, who quickly became a fan favorite in Dallas because he averaged double-digit scoring in each of his first 5 seasons and would lead the franchise to multiple playoff appearances in its young history. I guess that's worthy of making it to the top 10, don't you? His play became more consistent during his time in Dallas, and he became the first Mav to have his number retired. Very recently, Luka Doncic passed him in the all-time scoring list in the franchise's history, but he's still 8th on it and 2nd in assists while being 6th in steals. He was pretty good, but definitely not better than the next player I have for y'all, Steve Nash. Now, the younger ones may only know Nash as a coach, but he was one of the best players in the NBA in modern history. His 6 seasons with the Mavericks were sandwiched between his time with the Suns, and while his career in Dallas took some time to get going, it's been pretty fantastic since the turn of the century. His scoring average went over 15, and he was averaging 7.3 assists per season after 2000-2001. Eventually, Nash would win the MVP award too, but not with the Mavericks, and that might be the reason he's 9th on this list and not higher. But he was one of the premier point guards in the league during his stint with the Mavs, and I suppose that's worth something. Because after all, he helped ignite a dominant era for the Mavs in the 2000s. He may be a franchise cult hero. But talk about franchise legends, you got Derek Harper next. He was one of the major reasons why the Mavericks became so successful in the 80s. Dallas picked him as the 11th overall pick in 1983, and he became a hit after a couple slow seasons. Averaging 16 points and just under 8 assists, Harper took the Mavs to the Western Conference Finals. And while they fell just a game short of making it to the championship, Harper had established his legacy in Dallas. Then he also produced his best scoring season in a Mavs uniform, averaging just under 20, before leaving them for the Knicks. Due to the love he got from the Mavericks, the 6'4" returned to Dallas for a final season and remains top of the Mavs all-time list for assists and steals. A consistent scorer too, Harper's remembered as a legend, but if we're talking about consistency, Jason Terry deserves a mention too. Few players in history have been as consistent as Jason Terry. And he was, after all, a serious part of the greatest moments in Mavs franchise history. He arrived in Dallas in 2004 from the Hawks, and once he became a regular, Terry didn't look back. The Jet averaged over 17 points and shot over 41% from the deep to help the Mavericks to a Western Conference championship, and then eventually moved into a bench role where he thrived. The biggest example of this came in 2012 when off the bench he was averaging over 17 points in the playoffs with 44% shooting from the range and helped the Mavericks win their only championship. He has the second most points in franchise history in the playoffs, and he has the most three-pointers made for them in the playoffs too. Truly a clutch player. But you can't possibly ignore Jason Kidd if you're talking about clutch moments. The current head coach of the Mavs, Kidd arrived as the 2nd overall pick in 1994 and spent only 2-ish seasons before being traded to the Suns. Boy, did he have a career. Eventually, Kidd would return to the Mavericks after having a successful NBA career. He'd regressed by the time he made his comeback in Dallas, but you could see that the quality was still there. He provided them with a steady point guard that they'd needed, and he was a crucial part of their 2011 title run as well. He was good, but not better than the player he's currently coaching, Luka Doncic.
I thought Duran did.
Okay.
And I think it went to Powell's face in honor of what always seems to happen.
And it's a 3-ball up top for Luka. In the Motor City. Corner 3. Stare down Luka, and he is back with a bench.
Now, I know some might argue that he warrants a place higher on this list, and I don't disagree. By the time he retires, Luka might even be first. All he needs is that one ring for the Mavericks, and the rest of the story writes itself. He's already won Rookie of the Year since arriving in the NBA, and he can do it all. And, well, he has been doing it all. Doncic already is in the top 5 in the franchise history for three-pointers made, 10th in career assists, and he's averaging more points than anyone in Mavs history.
Luka, it's never been done in NBA history, a 60-point, 20-rebound triple-double. 60 points, 20 boards, it never happened, baby. How's it feel right now?
I'm tired as hell.
You can rest later, you're young.
I need a recovery beer.
We can handle that. Look, there's so much to talk about in this, but I want to go back to regulation. Take us through that final play.
But for me, he ranked below this quartet, with Mark Aguirre just a shade ahead. He became the #1 pick in the 1981 draft, and it didn't take him long to prove that he was definitely worth it. Aguirre was one of the mainstays of that Mavs team of the 80s. The 6'6" small forward averaged well over 20 points for the most part of his Dallas career, and from what I've heard about him, he was a pretty fantastic player. The stats speak for themselves, too. He's third in both points and made field goals for the Mavericks, and is the 6th all-time in franchise history for rebounds, too. But for all his brilliance, Aguirre misses out on the top 3 to Michael Finley. What a sensational player. Now, he didn't experience championship success with the Mavericks, but Dallas was the place where he peaked, making back-to-back All-Star teams in 2000-2001. Finley was something of a spark plug for that Dallas team. In his 9 seasons with the Mavericks, Finley was another do-it-all player who remains in the top 5 for three-pointers made, career rebounds, and steals. But in terms of legacy, Rolando Blackman's 11-year storied career in Dallas was probably better. He arrived alongside Aguirre, but few players stayed in Dallas longer than Blackman. In fact, he's the longest-serving Mav on this list. The shooting guard made it to 3 All-Star appearances in a row and averaged well over 19 points during his time with the franchise. He had the highest career points in franchise history until Dirk Nowitzki came along, who, well, needs no introduction. Nowitzki is up there as the best import to the NBA, and, well, he was the driving force behind the Mavericks' biggest achievement to date, the championship in 2011. But the German star also was responsible for changing the game itself, and he pretty much leads every stat line for the franchise, too. Mark Cuban is heavily indebted to Nowitzki's services. After all, he's the reason the Mavs had that 1 ring. Nowitzki also won the MVP in 2007 and made it to 11 straight All-Star appearances before back-to-back NBA final journeys, one of which he managed to convert. But that's not all, as some Mavs players deserve an honorable mention, too. For instance, Shawn Marion and Josh Howard. Marion was a 4-time NBA All-Star who also played a crucial role in the 2011 run. The Matrix, as Kenny Smith would call him, was one of the most versatile players in the league. I loved watching Marion play, easily one of the best defenders the game has ever seen. But Josh Howard also deserves a mention. He was the #1 pick of the 2003 draft and averaged over 15 points and 6 rebounds during his stay in Dallas. A very useful All-Star who eventually moved on, but still gets a lot of love in Dallas. That's all from my side. See you in the next one.